down in here. Look at you. People are very intolerant and ignorant of the importance of flying foxes and why we actually need them. Every single night while we're sleeping, they're out making forests. And they do that because they've got this incredible symbiotic relationship with our Australian native plants. So eucalypts and melaleucas, anything that exudes a nectar, the flying foxes are just like, they're like honeybees at a honey pot, because that is their favourite food. And people go on about them wanting to, eat their fruit, but it's all about nectar. They're nectar feeders. So when they go to these trees and seek out that little bit of drop of nectar inside that little tiny cap, which is your flower, which is Australian flowers are so unique in their makeup anyway. So the flying fox, they put their little tongues inside these little cups and they get that little drop of nectar. But while they're doing that, there's a little bundle of stamens that just go all over their face. So these little stamens have little pollen grains all on the ends, and their faces then become covered in pollen. So their little faces then go to the next flower, and again they're putting their little tongues in and getting their faces covered in pollen again. Now this is the most wonderful transfer of pollen, and all of our eucalypt species rely on the outcrossing of pollen, which means that the pollen is transferred from one tree quite a distance to another tree. And this actually increases the genetic diversity of that eucalypt. It's under the wing, it's in there. I've been a carer for around 16 years, and in that time I've always been very careful to observe why that animal is where it is and why has it been injured, what are the circumstances. So even at an electrocution, I'll look around and see, why did you want to land here? Why here? At barbed wire fences, you go, well, yeah, what's here? Why have you got trapped? So all the time I've been looking at cause. And, time and time again, I come back with the same thing that's drawn that animal to the reason why it's become seriously injured, and it's always a cocos palm. Cocos palms have been introduced to Australia. The palm is an environmental weed, and mainly because of its fast growth, and it is a very untidy, messy palm. So when people have grown it as a fast growing palm in their gardens, which it was a popular landscaping plant in the early 1960s, so from there people now in the 1990s just believe that it is a really messy palm, but it's also a harbourer of cockroaches, so lots and lots of cockroaches live in cocos palms, and it has these enormous big fruiting bodies. This fruit, it's very sweet smelling, it tastes very, very sweet. The flying foxes, they first of all smell the fruit and they are drawn to that incredible fruity smell, and when they eat it, they roll it around in the back of their mouths, just ripping off the flesh that's on the fruit. But unfortunately, the fruiting body or the seed capsule itself is a really hard capsule. And if we think about all of our Australian native fruits, there aren't very many fruits that are available all year round, like the cocos palm, and flying foxes are making use of this as a food source and probably becoming extremely dependent on it. I went to a barbed wire rescue just recently, and the poor animal, he was caught on the barbed wire fence just by a little bit of membrane, and the membrane was closer to his foot, so we could have easily recovered this animal, and he didn't have a lot of teeth, but he was a very big, healthy male, and the cocos palms, we believe, are responsible for the wearing of the teeth as well because of this rolling of the seed around in the back of the mouth, and it breaks off canines, and it's quite a serious palm for tooth wear. That's my opinion anyway, from the experiences that I've had. So this poor boy, he's caught by a little bit of membrane, which he could have been recovered, but there was a peewee on the fence that was doing this, you know, making lots of noise and waving its wings around because the bat was in its territory. And so it made the flying fox extremely terrified as soon as daylight came. This bird sitting above him, screaming at him, "What are you doing on my fence?" So the poor bat was trying to bite himself from the barbed wire fence. So the barbs, as you know, are all over the place. You know that there's 4 barbs on a barb on a fence. And so trying to bite his flesh from that fence, he was actually biting through the barbs, and the barbs were going up into the roof of his mouth. Even if we could have got his wings and things, you know, repaired him to go back to the wild, he'd done so much damage to the top of his mouth that he would not have been able to be put back out there. But the unfortunate thing was, because of the stress of the peewee and being, you know, crucified out on a fence during the daytime without his friends and, you know, no one there, all alone, it was such a shock for him to be, you know, on this fence that he was dying by the time I got there. And it was only early morning, so he really was dying from shock. And a really sad thing for I estimate he would have been probably 10 to 12 years old. So for him to be dying exposed like that was really sad. And it does affect us as carers because no one else sees what we see. And we see this day in, day out. Every day we see the horrors of animals being exposed and dying cruel and awful deaths. So the cocos palm, really, we have to think about where they are in our environment and try hard to exclude them from places that will cause damage. So we must work with councils to please work on what you're allowing commercial properties to plant at barbed wire fences, because it just means that forever and a day organisations like ours will be picking bats off the same barbed wire every single year. When that plant fruits or flowers, we'll be back there and removing the same, doing the same horrible job.